One of those things where, just like me, it doesn't have to be too pretty because it still gets the job done. What's up, YouTube? My name is Marcus. Thank you for joining me on my channel, Cooking with Marcus. Today we have another one of my fall favorites, pierogies. We're going to start with about a little over 2 cups of flour. We're going to take about 1 teaspoon of salt. We're going to mix it together. These are our dry ingredients in the dough. We're just going to sift them together nice and easy. Now we're going to take our wet ingredients. This is 1 full egg and 1 egg yolk. This is 1 cup of sour cream. Next, we're going to take 1 teaspoon of butter. Is it a tablespoon? Is it a tablespoon of butter? Thank you to my lovely assistant. And 1 tablespoon of oil. And now, we're just going to mix these together. We're going to have all of these at room temperature. So we're just going to mix those together nice and easy until we get a nice blend. Now we're going to take our wet ingredients and introduce it to our dry ingredients, just like my last relationship. And now we're going to mix. So this is the start of the true grandma process, because this is all the loving. Well, the whole recipe is loving, but all the loving is really in. All right, I can see we're going to be getting into it. Oh fuck. We're getting into it already. Now, we gotta go in with our hands. And this is really where the love comes in. Because this is a, oh Jesus. This is a hand mixed dough. I mean, you can use a blender, and I'm sure in the bigger operations where this is usually done, of course you use a hand blender, but in true grandma fashion, we're just going to mix this by hand. Now, in a restaurant, you have a professional dough mixer. In all the restaurants I've been in, we use a Hobart, which, I mean, you can make just massive amounts of dough or mashed potatoes or anything. And normally, this is another one of the recipes that they use in the Northeast for church fundraisers, where you just get you get 50 grandmas together and everybody makes pierogi, which is great. But, I mean, if you're going to go old school, you got to mix the dough by hand. And this is only half of the recipe. The full recipe calls for double of all the ingredients I just listed. But see, but this is why grandmas love us. And I mean, I'm sure, you know, obviously back in the day they did this barehanded, but you know, just to be safe. And look, I mean, you can tell this is such a small batch because it's only myself and my lady friend. But we got this dough. So we got this dough nice and mixed up. And you'll see, we're gonna mix this up later. Or not mix it up, but you'll see how we work it later. That sounds like an adult sleepover. So we got our dough ready to go, and we're gonna let it sit. And this is an old baker's technique. Get all the extra dough off your gloves with the main batch. And now we're gonna let the dough sit and rest. We're gonna let the dough sit and rest, and then we're gonna cover it for 20 minutes. And as that dough sits and rests, we're gonna work our mashed potatoes fillings, or I'm sorry. I guess it is not mashed potatoes as you would do for a side for dinner. This is gonna be technically mashed potato stuffing, but we're gonna season it very lightly. But it's pretty much done at this point. But basically, we're gonna do cubed potatoes. We're gonna add a touch of salt, a touch of onion powder, and that's it. Not your normal cream, milk, garlic powder, and all that, because all of that is gonna happen later when we cook it and season it. So this will just be, I guess, mashed stuffing, but not really. You know, it's a grandma thing. You guys will see. You guys will see. All right, YouTube. So now we're gonna make our mashed filling. We have about 3 large Idaho potatoes. We're gonna take about a half a cup of shredded cheese. This is a mixed cheese, but you can use whatever you want, really. A couple dashes of ground pepper. A couple dashes of salt. 1 little dash of onion powder. And like I said, this is not your standard mashed potatoes. This is just mashed potato filling. We're not going to fully season it. We're not going to dump in a bunch of garlic and a bunch of other seasonings. This is just mashed filling. Okay, so here we go. I'm just going to, with our glorious plastic masher, we're just going to get in there with that elbow grease and mash this up. See, it does, I mean, we're gonna mash it up nice, but this is one of those things where, just like me, it doesn't have to be too pretty because it still gets the job done. So we're gonna mix this up. I think that's pretty good. A little more. Yeah, that's good. So we're just going to let that go, and we're going to let that cool down so to about room temperature, so when we mix it or when we put it in the pierogies, it's not cooking them and we can just proceed. Alright guys, so now we're really going to get into the mix of it. Our dough has been setting for about 20 minutes. So now we're going to roll it out. So now when you deal with any dough, you want to make sure You do it on a floured, very floured surface. You want to make sure your hands are floured, and you want to make sure your rolling pin is very floured. This prevents sticking. So here we go. We're gonna, and you see, we've let the dough set. It's kind of still, it's still moist and looking for flour. This is where the grandma game really kicks in. So you want to flour it up on top, flip it over, flour it out on the bottom. We're going to spread it out as much as we can with our hands. And now we're going to start rolling. And see, this is where the expertise really comes in handy. This is where the generational knowledge comes in handy. So, I'm just going to keep rolling. Oh, but you see that? That's too thin there. But that's all right. We'll get rid of that. Okay, so you want this dough thin, but not paper thin. I think we can get away with this. Okay. So that's, I think that's a good dough. And from here on out, we're gonna start cutting out the dough. All right, guys, so we have our dough rolled out. So what I'm gonna do is a quick example of how we're gonna make the pierogies. So we have a circular cutter. We're gonna go in. 2, 3, 4. Alright, now we're gonna work these out. See? But that's the thing, with this type of dough is pretty forgiving. It's not like cake batter or something along those lines. You still can kind of form it afterwards. And that's why a lot of these recipes are, oh my goodness. Oh, we got an oval pierogi. Right, so for brevity's sake, I'm just going to do 4 on camera real quick. So we have our 4 not so beautiful pierogies, but that's all right. So we're going to take a little bit of stuffing. Oh, I did not grab a fork. A little bit of stuffing on each one. 2. And that's about half a tablespoon of stuffing in each. 3. Now, that's why, this is the reason a lot of people are intimidated about this, just because of the dough and the stuffing, but it's so easy. Let me show you. We're going to take a fork just to make it sexy. I had a bowl of water, but apparently that's gone.
It's right there.
Oh, here we are. So we're going to take a little bit of water, and in most baked goods, this is egg yolk, but we're just going to go around the outside. Oh my God, don't judge me. This is not going to look that pretty. Oh my goodness. So we're going to take it, stuff it towards the back end. You see we're pushing the potato filling towards the back. We'll do this one more time, hopefully a little better. But like I said, this is why this is Grandma Gang. So one more time, a little water around the edges. We're going to take it. Roll it over. These are little half moons. See, you want that, you see why that flour is so important, so it doesn't stick. And now, here's the super secret technique to make it, give it a little extra fancy. We're just going to take our fork, just make sure it sticks together. Let's see, you see the seam there? That's alright. We're just going to give it those little... And while you're stuffing it, you want to make sure it doesn't burst. As usual. So one more time. I'm just going to go along the edges. This is going to help it stick together along with the water we put along the edges. Maybe a little too much water there, but that's alright. And this is one of those things, you know, with dough, with these old school recipes, you live and you learn. And so, that was about 5 minutes for 2 pierogies. Now we have the rest of the dough, and then if there's any dough left over, we're going to re-roll it and make it into more pierogies. So you can only imagine the effort when you're making 500 to 1,000 of these. And this is why church groups get groups of grandmas together to make these, because even though the actual recipe isn't that hard, the work behind it, like I said, these 2 pierogies took 5 minutes just to make, because I'm a noob and can't bust them out. But even still, in a mass-produced environment, this is a lot of effort, and I still have to finish all these, and I'm still going to show you all these. But we're gonna cut and I guess spend the next hour finishing up all these pierogies and cooking them up for you. Alright guys, so now we're going to start the 2-part process of cooking our pierogies. So we made them all up. We got about 25 out of that batch with a bit of leftover filling. That was half the recipe. Once again, I will link the recipe in the description below. But now we're going to start the process. So we're going to take about 8 pierogies and we're going to drop them in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and this is just for our dinner this evening. We're going to make sure we stir them up, and we're going to let those cook until they float, and that is it. We do not want to overcook them. And now we have some butter. I actually went a little extra and used garlic butter, but we're going to take that garlic butter and throw in some onions, and that's going to be our topping. We're going to stir those up. I wish you guys could smell this. We're going to let that go. So our onions are cooking, our pierogies are cooking. I'll see you in a minute. Alright guys, so as you can see, our pierogies are floating. They're cooked to boil, so we're going to take a slotted spoon and just bring them out onto a plate with a paper towel, because after this we're going to fry them up, and we do not want water mixing with fryer oil. Let me repeat that. We do not want water mixing with the fryer oil, no matter what any internet recipe tells you. Alright guys, so we have our pierogies boiled off until they float. Now we're going to take them in and fry them off until they get a nice brown crust. So here we go. There's our boiled pierogies. Now we're just going to drop them in. Be very careful. Make sure you don't stick your fingers in hot oil. And now we're just going to let those cook. Maybe 2 minutes per side. And then we'll be good to plate. So, I'll see you guys at the plating. Alright guys, so here we are at the final plating. We've cooked up 8 pierogies from this batch, and the leftover is about 19. So, what, 27 pierogies out of this? And if you want to make more, you just scale up the recipe from there. I will have the original recipe in the link below. So let's take a look at it. Let's give this a try. So I covered them with buttered onions and some scallions. Let's give a little tasty plain. But you see how nice and crispy they turned up? We cooked them up in oil for about 10 minutes. Let's give it a try. Ooh. Very crispy, very good. The trick is, in most restaurants, to get these, and what we did was, once again, boil them until they float, and then we fried them. So let's try it with a little touch of sour cream, just like Grandma intended. We'll give this one more try. But see how nice and crispy they are? I gotta say, that's absolutely beautiful. And this dough is a pretty universal dough, and we will be using it in the future. So if you enjoyed this, if you've ever had pierogies, please like, comment, and subscribe. humbly begging you. I'm going to come over here and tell you specifically to understand that I'm just doing this